Welcome to the Get Loved Up podcast. I'm Koya Webb, founder of Get Loved Up, where we inspire you to love yourself more, love others more, and love the planet more. Each week, I'll interview a special guest who will share their insights on how they practice daily self-care, tackle tough challenges in life, and thrive in the world one breath at a time. You will be inspired to take control of your life as you heal yourself mentally, spiritually, and physically, and create a reality in alignment with your deepest passions. Let's get loved up. Everybody's searching for something to fill that empty space. Hello, and welcome to the Get Loved Up podcast. I am so excited to have you back here again, and I'm so excited about our very special guest today. I just want to say thank you so much for your comments, for your question, and for your reviews. Our reviews are climbing. I really appreciate your feedback about the show and about you sharing with everyone how you feel and how much you love the show. It really lights my soul on fire. I love this community. I really appreciate our Get Loved Up community, and your love and your sharing enables us to have more and more guests on the show. So thank you so much for your love and support. And with no further ado, I want to introduce to you Laruga Glaser. She is phenomenal. I've been following her and practicing with her for a while. And let me read you a little bit about who she is. She has been practicing Ashtanga Yoga continuously for over 23 years. Starting at the beginning of her 20s, she was immediately drawn to the practice after working with other forms of yoga years prior. After establishing a committed practice, she then deepened her studies, traveling to Mysore, India, annually to practice at KPJYI, where the late Sir Patapi Joyce taught and his now grandson, R. Srita Joyce, teaches. Laruga has made more than 14 trips to Mysore and is on a mission to continue to learn and grow as a student as well as a teacher. She is one of the few in the world who have been given the distinction of being certified to teach up to Advanced B, which is not easily given and takes many years to earn. Through it all, Laruga teaches as an act of deep sharing and love for what yoga develops in each individual, facilitating space to open, challenge, and inspire those to realize their inherent potential, and has been personally invited all over the world to do so. Laruga, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so excited about this interview because I remember when I first found you, and it was actually on YouTube, and your poise and your grace and your focus was mesmerizing to me. And especially being a woman of color, which I have never had a yoga instructor in my years of certifications and yoga practice. I'd never had a woman of color as a teacher. So to see you command space and lead and guide and such a humble and gentle but powerful way was so inspirational to me. Can you share a little bit about the beginnings? Because I know you shared you had, tapping in with other types of yoga, but you chose Ashtanga. Can you share your path to yoga and then also why you chose Ashtanga?
Yeah, so thank you for your really generous words. I just want to say that first. It's very flattering. Thank you. It's so interesting because I feel like when I started to delve into yoga, it wasn't necessarily very popular even in my age group at the time. And there were remnants of it bubbling up, but in my age group, it's like there was so many people that were quite non-interested in this type of just journey or work, and I just had a curiosity about it starting in about my adolescence in high school, just because I was interested in spirituality, in spiritual thought, in some new age thought. And just through delving into that, in between just being a normal teenager, I came across yoga and the yoga philosophy. And so that was my first gateway into yoga before I even began a practice. And so it's something that just struck me or planted a seed at the time. And I understood but I didn't understand fully that, yes, there was a philosophy to it, but then there's also these asanas too. And, you're just kind of taking in the information, but I didn't really understand how it was all laid out, or, how somebody even becomes a practitioner. And I also remember a few times watching a woman on PBS who was like doing yoga postures, like I don't even know who this woman is. I'd have to do some research, because I also was struck by how she was like making these shapes, but it was very slow. It wasn't as dynamic as yoga is represented now. It was very slow. She'd hold the posture, she would kind of speak. And I remember being drawn by it because it wasn't necessarily what she was doing, but I just noticed that she had this sense of calm. It kind of felt like I don't know, there was something that resonated with me. So there was that visualization that I was introduced to, but you're just digesting it. You're not really, or I guess I was just observing, but I wasn't fully digesting it. And then, of course, I later, when I was, after I graduated from high school, I started to, um, experience some back pain, and like I was having some issues in my body, and lots of things weren't helping. And then something kind of, because that seed was planted prior, I was like, oh, maybe I should try this yoga. There's these asanas and they're supposed to be healing. And I just gave it a go. At that time, there were a few like tapes that you could buy, like VHS tapes. And I just remember back then there was a few things by Rodney Yee. There was something that I had purchased by Patricia Walden, like these, very senior, more Iyengar focused teachers. But I remember just going through some of their simple movements and postures, and it was so miraculous, because it just seemed to help whatever I was experiencing in my back, with this back pain. And that, again, it planted another seed where to me, it felt like magic. I thought there was something magical about yoga, especially the postures themselves. But what I realized in retrospect, that, I just finally just got a little bit still within myself. I mean, I think when you're very young too, you have so much thoughts running through your mind. You're running and running, and you're trying to make something of yourself, and you're not always very present. And I just feel like the reason why I felt a sense of healing is I was just still. I was in the breath. I was, feeling, I mean, as we know, like unconscious energy gets locked up in the body. And I was just feeling whatever that was. And I was just holding space for it. And at that time, I didn't really understand what was happening. All I knew is I felt better, and I felt shifted. Something had shifted. And that was really the start. And I think many people can identify this, once you are hooked, you're hooked. And I started to research more, and then I found Ashtanga. So yeah.
I love that. I love kind of like the humble beginnings. And you're right. I feel the same way. Once you're hooked, you are hooked. And even if you don't do it every day, you remember that feeling that you felt in the yoga classes. Past the pain and past the discomfort, there's this inner peace that you
Mhm.
feel. So I'm curious to know, what made you fall in love with Ashtanga?
Oh man, so many things. It just felt so powerful. Like when I first delved into it, I was following through videos before I found a teacher, not too long after I found a teacher. But um, I remember at that time, after starting off with these other more simple forms of yoga, which were really profound and powerful, I just was one of these people that was very curious, and I continued to do research. And the only person that really had material at that time was David Swenson. And I remember getting his book and getting a few of his videos. And I did make the mistake when I first looked at his videos. I thought you were supposed to follow along, but it did say, like later I looked back, and it did say it was demonstration. So I almost killed myself trying to do what he was doing, because he just made everything look so easy. And I just thought, oh, of course, I could just do as he does. Little did I know, even just simple sun salutations were much more demanding than they looked. But I remember like trying to just bumble my way through some of these postures. I couldn't keep up with him throughout I think it was a primary series, of course. But what was so interesting, even though I was making every mistake possible, like I wasn't getting the breath fully connected and I had to keep looking up and then trying to figure out what I was doing in my body. Again, I felt something kind of move, like even though I wasn't fully immersed in all the principles of the practice, um, I just felt something shift. And when I did further research into the practice, it just felt the most complete to me. I mean, um, as far as it really truly being an inside out approach, and I liked how on the outside it does look like it's just purely physical, but actually that's kind of the illusion that it looks as if, when people on the outside see it, it looks as if that's all that's happening. But the fact that it really does, if you study the method further, it's really about connecting inwardly and working that energy outward and truly it becoming a meditative practice. And the completeness of that, and that it was also, you were being guided to be a self-practitioner, because again, the yoga practice doesn't penetrate as deeply unless you can implement and apply those principles and take yourself through the steps. And so all of that just really resonated with me at the time and continues to. So
I love that. And I love David's videos because before I found yours, there was his and I followed his. And again, it was intense and it was a lot. It was a lot. And you go at a specific pace before you dive right in. So your first teachers, when you first decided, how long did you go before you decided you wanted to be a teacher?
Oh, it actually took a while. I mean, I practiced and I actually delved into teaching very slowly. I was practicing a good 5 to 6 years before teaching. And when I started to teach, I first started just kind of like teaching friends who were interested and knew that I was quite passionate about the practice. And then what started to happen is I didn't really chase after it. When I would drop in at studios and like take a primary series class, like a lead class, or sometimes because where I was in Columbus, Ohio, there wasn't always Mysore class every day, but when I would take a Mysore class, and a few places where I would go, they started to ask, they saw my dedication, I guess, and they were just like, would you be interested in teaching? And that's really how it began, because I already had a career in something else, but I did love the practice so much. So I just felt that sharing the practice was just an extension of my love and dedication. And I started to teach on the weekends, just teach. Like first it was just on a Saturday I was teaching, and then somebody asked me to also do a Sunday. And then, I was doing a full-time job and then teaching Saturday and Sunday and all these types of things. So it kind of grew from there. And I never at that time thought I would be a full-time teacher. It's just something that started to evolve over time.
And what was your other job that you were doing before yoga?
So I was in sales, like corporate sales. I was in pharmaceutical sales. And at that time, very demanding job. And I kind of thought I was going on a certain track in my life. And I think many people can identify that as you go deeper into the yoga, it just shifts how you look at your life, and slowly things start to change. You don't realize it's changing, but it is by your choices, and like day by day, week by week, month by month, things were shifting and changing. And it started to crowd out almost everything else that wasn't speaking to me, like that wasn't speaking to my heart or my soul. And it's like a natural progression, so.
I love that you're sharing how the time it took, because I think a lot of time with my Get Loved Up yoga teacher training, people are like, when can I start teaching and when is this going to happen? And I think you are a representation of things just take time, and the time that you practiced before you became a teacher, and the time. I'm not saying that it has to take that long for everyone, but I think there is value in being able to dive into something and first learning for yourself, and then to decide to teach, and also having another job, and then eventually moving into teaching. So how long did it take for yoga to crowd out the other jobs you were doing?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the exact amount of years. I mean, again, I feel like so much of my journey has just been a slow burn, like I was dedicated to the practice like daily. And it really just started from there. But even though with like demanding work, I was still like doing my practice every day and then slowly teaching. So I'm just trying to think like, maybe it was in a realm of, I mean, before I even started teaching at all, I was already practicing 5 to 6 years prior to that with no teaching. So um, then when I started to delve into like teaching a little bit, I would say maybe it was around 3 to 4-ish years,
Mhm.
something like that. I experienced a lot of ups and downs because when I did leave the corporate world, there was a time where it was pretty scary because life was feeling pretty lean, like there was a lot of uncertainty, and so that was challenging, and it's scary, but at the same time, I felt a strong sense of freedom because I really was doing something that I cared about and that I loved. So it kind of helped me to ride out that uncertainty. Um, and and the practice, I have to say, helped me to get through it because there were times where I was like, okay, it's looking a little dark. It's looking a little um, like I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it, like just financially and like just how am I gonna like just prosper a little bit here. There was a time where it was I was questioning it, but I let things go and I just kept walking forward. So yeah.
What do you feel like was the most challenging time in your yoga career?
Um, I mean, I've had quite a few challenging times. I mean, um, it's interesting. It's a space where it should be fostering a lot of acceptance and love and like this. I don't know how to explain it, but it can be a little bit of like, I hate to say it, but I was even talking to a friend like a few days ago. Sometimes it's like Game of Thrones. Like, I mean, I've had people like totally, like people really, I mean, I don't know. I've always been into the sense of collaborating and learning from people, but what I've noticed is sometimes it's not always like that in certain spaces. There are some spaces that are. I mean, I don't want it to be overtly negative, but there have been interesting instances as I started to delve into teaching where I did have people really actively try to block me. Um,
Mm.
and it's just the reality. I'm not saying it to be a victim. I think it just helped me to stay awake and vigilant and also to keep the faith that if I stay true, things do open up I've learned also that those types of behaviors are not sustainable anyway. So whether I don't have to necessarily teach someone a lesson. I just have to keep marching forward in what is true for me and authentic. And then, I've already seen, that those behaviors they're not sustainable. They don't always work. So those have been some difficult times, personally, it's just the thing that the practice, sometimes people don't always understand is that when you delve into this work, it's like you do have to kind of get used to living in uncertainty. And those have been hard times because growing up, and now I live in Europe, but just growing up in the US, it's so strong and conditioned that having this vision for your life, and sometimes it's already prescribed for you. And when you don't fulfill that, sometimes you start to doubt yourself because your life isn't looking like other people's. And so I've also had to learn to abandon the comparison, and of, what that dream is, because we're kind of given these visual images of what it should look like. And so I've had to learn that that doesn't matter. It has to look in the way that feels right to me. And, as long as I'm not hurting anyone. And I've gone through some struggles with that, like some push and pull, like, uh, you know, maybe I should just do the conventional thing. And, but then it never fits my personality, I guess. So yeah, so many things like, yeah.
I appreciate you acknowledging that it's not just been a cakewalk and all the doors aren't just flinging open because you're beautiful and female, that it has
Yeah.
been challenging. And I think um, it's very helpful for people in the community listening, because people are experiencing those same challenges. I know I experienced those same challenges, especially as a woman of color. And as I mentioned before, not seeing that many examples or representations at the front of the classroom. And that was something that I felt like was lacking. And then seeing you and saying, okay, well, it's just something that just like, okay, well, if there are more of us out there teaching, it's not just me, there can be more and we can bring more to the table. And so one of the things that you posted on social media, you were sharing your story about how you experience people treating you differently because of, being a female and being a Black female at that, or a woman of color at that, depending on how you identify. Can you share a little bit about that? Because like I said, I do believe when we share our stories, it inspires other people to know how to get through these times and know that that cannot keep you down.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's so interesting. I'm just trying to think of where to begin, because at that time when I spoke, I wasn't really, I didn't even really plan on it. Like it just, I think there were so many kind of things happening in the world. And then you just start to connect all the dots of your history, and like how I didn't even realize how much was there, because even some people gave me feedback who know me, is like, I've never seen you talk like that. Like really, like I am quite an introverted person. I mean, I'm open to share, but I don't advertise everything. Like just, I don't throw it out. And so I just felt something pull me like so strongly just to speak and just to share my experience, because I did have, a week or two prior, someone actually directly asked me, like, what has your experience been being a woman of color, and what challenges have you faced? And that's another thing I think I said, is like, this is for you. This is for those of you who wonder. It's not for anybody else, do you know? And I wanted to like offer that story and the encouragement that, to keep working and to keep marching forward. And so, it's interesting. Like yes, I'm female. Yes, I'm a woman of color. And also I've always been someone that it's like, I don't do things 50%. If I'm in it, it's 100 or 150. So I poured hard work into everything with no entitlement. And I just found it interesting how I was just not getting, like just offers to collaborate, or like I mentioned, like seats at the table. And I'm just like, well, why? Because I have done the work, I've put in the time. Um, and then you kind of look at the circles that are running and you see that there's no diversity there. It's hard not to take notice of those things. And I'm so glad I got that off of my chest, because it's not that I was afraid to speak, but it just sometimes it gets to the point where it just seems like no one seems to care. Do you
Mm.
know it? Like, no, it just doesn't seem to matter to people, in certain yoga communities. And I think I also got used to just kind of shamelessly being in spaces, even if I was the only one. I was shameless about it too. Like, you might think you're getting rid of me, but you're not. Like, I'm going to stand tall. I'm not very tall, but, but I'm going to be here, and and I don't care if it annoys you. Like, I just really started, but I did it in a quiet, steady way, not in a way to get into people's faces about it. But one thing I didn't know, that no one can discriminate against hard work. I mean, and that's something that I was just like I'm like, I will work doubly as hard. And even with that, I've noticed that people working hard, but maybe not as much, and with the right look, they would just, like explode. And again, it doesn't always help to compare and everything. But the thing is I've also had to learn that I'm in it for the long term, and I've always had to look for the long game. And I've seen people kind of pass me by, but then they burn out pretty quick, and it's not always for the right reasons. And so I just keep trucking, and I keep going.
Good.
So, yeah, and it was, and in my travels too, I was starting to get people like talking to me about the lack of diversity, and, even certain roundtable discussions, certain, like, what would you call like summits or things where like there's not even like it's just all white. There's like not even someone that's Latino or someone that's Asian, not, and God forbid nobody Black. It's just like, and I'm just like, this doesn't represent, people who are practicing yoga at this day and age. So I never understood the lack of awareness there, especially if it's a practice that is challenging us to be more aware. And so these have been really uncomfortable conversations for other people. I'm not uncomfortable talking about it, but I've noticed, like a few people sent me a few emails and like things like that, I don't know if it's their way to apologize or whatever, but which I do accept to some extent, but also sometimes for me, it's like a little too late. Like I'm all about forgiveness and everything. I don't have to, but sometimes I'm kind of like, like this is so obvious.
Right.
So
With everything going on in the world, now is a perfect time to pour into yourself. If you've been thinking about joining the wellness community and learning more about your health and wellness and how to improve the well-being of others, then the Get Loved Up Holistic Health and Yoga Teacher Training is for you. We have a variety of offerings from the 100 Hour to get a taste of how holistic health and yoga can bless your life, and the 200 to 500 Hours to deep dive into the study of how meditation, breathwork, yoga, and mindful living can transform your health and the health of our world. Go to koyawebb.com/YTT for more details. I'll see you there.
I appreciate you sharing that, because I think so many times, like you said, you want to say something, but you feel like, do people really care? And I have noticed that, yes, some people really care, but some people, especially the people you might love the most or hang around or even look up to, could give two shakes. And I feel like sometimes, especially for me being very empathic and very sensitive, I've allowed that to crush me a little bit in the heart space, and I'd had to emotionally get through the realization that, oh, this person really does not care about me, and they do not care whether I live or die or succeed or anything. Like really, like there's zero care, and more so focused on the people that do care. And I've definitely been in the spaces and seen that. And I don't even say me thinking that people showing literally, like you said, no call, no invite. You're right there. Everyone else gets invited, but you. Why not? The blatant neglect, to put it lightly, just blatant neglect, just blatant acting as if you don't exist. Experience all of those things, right? And so do you have any advice? I know definitely I agree with you. You just have to keep going. But when a person's kind of in their feelings, like I was, like being a sensitive soul and just feeling a little dark and down and like, maybe this isn't for me. Do you have any words of wisdom or specific practices other than the yoga practice and then of course being consistent, which I think are two of the big ones, but do you have any other words of wisdom or practices to get a person through that just feeling like, oh, like I I've just been disrespected, disregarded, spoke up, but now I feel like it doesn't even matter. And maybe I shouldn't have, because now everyone looks at me like the victim or the angry person. What advice do you have to people just listening and in that feeling?
Yeah, that's so good. It's a good thing to bring up. And I do remember one time long ago having a discussion with a woman that was a trainer, a teacher, and also studio owner. And I was very honest with her. But of course, you're kind of given that like angry Black woman type of, stereotype, which kind of like stops you from wanting to kind of represent that, in the future. And that was really such a turn off for me at that time. Like, it was so like, wow, I'm just really trying to be honest. And I think like, and also just for someone to kind of send that energy out to you. Like if it was somebody else of a different color or something, it would just be viewed just totally different. Um, and I think challenging the emotions of disappointment and frustration are so important, because believe me, I have definitely have felt that, where some things, the blatant disrespect or there's just feelings of outrage and hurt that I've definitely felt. And certain practices that have been really helpful for me is journaling. Like I'm not journaling to win a Pulitzer Prize or anything. It's just like, just pour everything out, and you can use whatever language you want to use just to get rid of that toxicity and all that garbage that, and that frustration and those emotions, and just writing it out. I think is so cleansing. I think it's been so helpful for me to just get rid of all of the rumination of thought, and then like get more into the center of my being, and get more clarity. Because again, I definitely have learned that living my life in a sense of reactionary behavior doesn't help, and in one way it just helps other people who throw that type of energy towards you. In one way, they're controlling you, you're kind of allowing them to push your buttons. But when you're hurt and you have to feel it, and so that's something that I've tried not to just like create a hard shell around me, where it's like, oh, I don't care. But, it does, like, you have to acknowledge that it hurts and you have to feel it. And I feel like things like journaling, and I'm sure there's other things out there that are very helpful for people, walking out in nature, to just get rid of that sense of like emotion that just carries such a heavy weight on you. And it's not always easy, because even recently I have felt like just different things happen, and kind of I allow myself to just kind of rant, or sometimes my boyfriend gets to hear it too. Like, let me, like, I can rant for like 5 or 10 minutes, but then it's just like, I got to put that away and just stay focused on what my vision is, and stay focused on what my purpose is, and not get pulled into drama, into people's lower energy. And it's not easy. I mean, it's so easy to allow people to pull you into, toxicity or whatnot. And I think that when it comes to other practices too, meditation is really important for me as well, just to kind of sit inside of myself, and learn how to kind of be in this space of observing and seeing the bigger picture, and being able to tap into other intuitive forces that, get suppressed when we stay in that level of distraction. And so I just find that, along with, of course, the yoga practice, to be really helpful for me to just get more centered, because life will always throw us a few curveballs, and we have to learn how to be more skillful in working through all of that. So not easy, but yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I 100%. You got to get it out. There's no just like spiritual bypassing or pretending like it doesn't exist, like whether it's a rant or just like putting it all in your journal, I definitely feel like that's something that I practice on a regular basis and I recommend on a regular basis. Just get it out, because I feel like if you don't, it vibrationally affects your being physically, emotionally, mentally. And so I appreciate you just acknowledging, like, you have to acknowledge it and get it out. But also what I love, and I feel like we're the same in this, is that you still have to keep going. And yes, there's times where you must rest and recover and sleep and practice self-care. But I think it's your consistency and your work ethic that really resonates with me, because I realize that, yes, I have to take care of myself and rest, but I have to, my presence is a protest, and your presence, just showing up, if you did nothing but practice and teach me, like, that is enough.
Yeah.
And I think so many times, because we feel like we don't belong, we're like, I'm just checking out. It's not for me. And I'm telling people every day, just showing up. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the greatest. You don't have to have the most followers or the most likes or the biggest business or make the most in the bank account. Just showing up consistently is where it's at. And everything else will work itself out. So thank you so much for those amazing tips. And I definitely feel like that people are going to get a lot out of this podcast, and a lot out of, you just sharing your story and speaking up and saying, hey, this is not easy, but I'm in it for the long haul. I'm not giving up. You can say what you want to say. You can do what you want to do, but I'm here to stay. And I think that's a beautiful thing to see in you and to witness. So now we want to have a little fun. I want to get to know you a little better. So I know we've been kind of within and on this forever staycation at home. What has been one of your favorite books? You can do one or two that you've read in the last year or so.
Oh, in the last year. Well, I'm not even well, there's one book I'm reading now. It's called Woman, Girl, and Other. Woman. Do you know what book I'm talking about? I have it in my bag. That's really good. It was a Pulitzer Prize winning, not Pulitzer Prize, I'm sorry, Man Booker, which is more from the UK, from a Black author. That's really interesting because she has, each chapter is about a different woman's experience. Like she has the whole gamut, like, gay, straight, like everything in between, different challenges and different vantage points being Black. It's more from the UK perspective, but I'm almost finished with it, but it's just been such a great fiction book and written really, really well. I think, it's Woman, Girl, Other, but I'm forgetting the author's name, but she did win the Man Booker last year. When it comes to, why am I like running? I love books, and I'm like drawing a blank right now. But I guess I should say, for a nonfiction book, I actually really liked, really appreciated Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I just found a lot of parallels to yoga philosophy in that, when it came to like self-accountability, self-responsibility, like there was just a few rules that I really appreciated, like before you complain about the world, get your own house in order. I thought that was like such an interesting thing. Be better than you were yesterday. Like, never compete with anyone else. Just be a better version of yourself than you were yesterday. Like, there were just a lot of parallels to what I have studied in the yoga philosophy, but just interpreted a bit differently. I think that book had a really profound impact on me. And the other thing, one of my favorite chapters of his book was the art of listening, that very few people know how to listen properly, and that you should always listen in a way that there's always something that you don't know, even if it's on a topic that you do know a lot about, that you should always leave space for something new. And I just felt like that is a very lost art, is really listening and really kind of taking in another person, because there's just so much to learn. So that was one of my favorite nonfiction books of the year.
I love that. And I love that because that's why I love the podcast, because even though I speak to many people, no one has your experience. And so
Mm,
listening to you, I'm getting another perspective. And I love the first book as well, because I love hearing about life from different perspectives, because everyone is part of the beauty that makes this world so beautiful. And
mm.
seeing different perspectives from people who don't live like you, don't look like you, don't think like you. I think that is really the beauty of life. So I'm going to add both of those two books to my list. Thank you so much. And what's your favorite color?
Oh God. Well, it's kind of funny because since I live in Stockholm, well, everyone wears black. So that's what, I have so much black in my wardrobe, maybe because it's a bit safe, but I've always really liked the color of like that turquoise blue, like in like, from the Caribbean, like
Mm,
the water, that type of color. That's like one of my favorite colors, like, or if you're in the Mediterranean or that color just makes me so happy. So I have to say if it's like, a color outside of black and gray that like I have in my wardrobe, it would be that.
I love that. And I love turquoise. That's actually my color for the holidays or Christmas time. It's
Oh.
red and turquoise, but turquoise is unlikely because I actually never liked wearing blue, and I don't
Mhm.
necessarily like wearing dark blue or navy, but I love turquoise. It just makes me happy. Makes me and it, resonates with the throat chakra. So that must be me like stepping into my power, speaking my truth and things like that. So all right. And what is your favorite song? Like, if you just want to let it go and you like, you know what? Do you have a favorite song that you're like, you know what? If I turn on this song, everything's going to be okay?
Oh my God. Oh, I'm such a bad person to ask this, but like it sounds really strange, but like late, I was in a restaurant last weekend and I don't know, it's a big throwback, but I just love Whitney Houston. I'm just like talk about someone with a voice. Like I was just hearing some of these songs because for some reason they were playing and I was in Denmark, like in Copenhagen, and I was in a Thai restaurant and they were playing like different songs by Whitney Houston. I was just like, oh my God, this song. And then there was another one. I was like, oh, this one's her best one. And I was like, no, this one is, I just felt some like, I don't know, it's so much nostalgia and also a little bit of sadness because I just kind of feel like, wow, what a talent, and like, and she's not here anymore. But uh, that was just something that I was really resonating with recently. So,
I love that. Whitney Houston is one of my all-time favorites as well. I
oh,
probably definitely play her every week. And, maybe a day or two I might miss playing with her, but she's on my regular, like, class break playlist because somebody is one of my favorite songs. Um,
that's awesome.
so many, so many. I love that. And I don't know if you watch TV. I don't have TV, but I do get on like Netflix and watch through my computer. But do you have a favorite show that you just love?
If I just think about my all-time favorite show, and I guess maybe it's not so unique, but it would have to be Breaking Bad.
I don't think I've seen that.
You
I guess
haven't?
TV, but like,
I
literally,
mean,
I watch shows like in the movie theater, and usually that's it. And I am part of the SAG committee, so I get all these movies. But that one, I don't know. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
I just felt like the acting, it was quite twisted and like
Mhm.
there were some like really iconic characters in there. Like I don't know, that was like one of the best written, like produced shows I feel like when it comes to like a series. And I'm trying to remember, I mean, the last show, I guess, I mean, it's been a while. That was like what, 5 years ago or something. So when they had the series finale, but I just still feel like there hasn't been much that has topped that. I mean, I know like a lot of people got into Game of Thrones and everything, but I just feel like the nuance and the way that story progressed was just so interesting. And also, like, it's kind of like a time just, Breaking Bad, being a little bit bad, it's like you can kind of vicariously live through that experience.
I love
Yeah.
I have to check it out. Like, this always gives me new things to check out. So I definitely got, like, once the pandemic hit, I got into like Greenleaf and Dear White
Yeah,
People.
I've seen that. Yeah.
There's a couple series that I was like, oh, and I watched the whole entire thing. Like, I just did like a movie marathon.
Oh,
And
nice.
I love doing that. And what about we're gonna get back to yoga a little bit. Is when it comes to yoga, who are some of your favorite teachers?
Oh, well, I mean, I have to definitely still give props to my first Ashtanga teacher who, she's well known in the city where I started. It was his Columbus, Ohio, because I went to university at Ohio State and everything, and her name's Laurel Hodri, and she really opened me up to the Ashtanga practice. Super strong woman. I don't know, she's still, because there was a time that she wasn't teaching Ashtanga anymore, but I really am so grateful for how she just was a great female representation of the practice, because she was just super strong. She had really strong boundaries too. Like she just had this, way about her. Not everyone resonated with it, but I just felt like I learned so much in those integral years. And the other teacher that's really close to my heart is Tim Miller out of Encinitas, California. I think now he's not teaching so much, but I feel like more than any teacher I've come across, and of course, my teacher now is Arsharat Joyce, but when it comes to teachers that outside of that have had a big impact on me, Tim Miller to me represented the Ashtanga yoga practice that was fully heart-centered. And I just felt like it was like without words, because he is a quite introverted person. I just felt like his heart was so big and you could feel it, and you could just feel like how he held space in that. It's just kind of I started to get an understanding how it's just so much more, it's an energy, and it's a lot of people can say, oh, I'm like this, or this is what I believe in, but it's not always embodied. And so I just feel like in a very quiet, steady way, he represented so much for me. So when it comes to like American teachers, those were the integral ones. And I mean, of course, my teacher now, I have a huge respect for, as he really holds the method of practice. And I've learned so much from Arsarat Joyce too, because it's just interesting studying with an Indian teacher. It is also very different as well. It's very energetic. It's not through a lot of like empty words. It's a lot of holding space. It's a lot of energy, which, has been so great for my education. That's why I feel compelled to continue to be a student and to learn, even after many years of practice. So I love being a student. I still pride myself in being a student as much as I can, because I'm just so curious, and I feel like there's still so much for me to grow into in the yoga practice.
I love that. I love that about you. I'm the same way. I'm like forever a student, always down to be a teacher and lead and guide. But I feel like having that heart of a student, it does keep you humble, and it does keep you in a state of continual growth and evolution. And I think that's part of growing and evolving and thriving. So thank you so much for taking the time to just sit with us and speak to us. And I just want to see if there's one last thing, if you could, speak to your 14-year-old self and there was one message that you had for her, what would it be?
Oh, that's such a great question. Oh my God, I think what I would tell my 14-year-old self is to really trust your inner voice. Like, it's really speaking to you. I mean, when I look back retrospectively, there was just so many times it was speaking loudly to me or softly. And I didn't always trust, I didn't always trust it. I didn't always value it because I thought other people's voices were more valuable. But I see how, and I did listen at times too, and I just see how it hasn't led me astray. And I think there were certain integral times in my life where I wish, I would just like to tell that young woman that, really trust that internal guidance that you have.
I love that. Trust your intuition.
Mm.
Always, always, always. I think that's such a powerful, powerful message for everyone. I hope everyone really enjoyed you as much as I did. And where can people find you? And what do we have to look forward to as you continue? I know everything's a bit uncertain right now, but where can people get a little bit more of you online?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm quite active on Instagram, so just Laruga Yoga, and also my website, larugayoga.com, where I have my schedule of things. I mean, the schedule was kind of blown for 2020, but so let's see what 2021 brings. I mean, I will start updating things slowly, but that's going to be the best place to see my schedule. And things that I'm chewing on for the future is just to do some things that are a bit more in depth, deeper. Like for many years, I've done a lot of weekend workshops and of course retreats, but now I'm also wanting to explore more intensive study, in-depth study into, different avenues of the yoga practice. And so, yeah, I would just, urge people if they're interested to look at those two places, probably going to be the best place. And yeah, I'm always thinking of new ways to develop and communicate and to give higher quality instruction. So.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your love, your time, your suggestions, and your story. And thank you all for joining us again for a Get Loved Up podcast. Until next time, love yourself, love others, and love the world one day at a time, one breath at a time. Peace and love.
Thank you.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you for being part of the Get Loved Up community. I like to share topics and people making a positive impact in the world, and your feedback means the world to me. If you haven't already left a review, please leave a 5-star review and let me know what you want to hear more of on the show. I'm here for you, and together we're making the world a better place, one day at a time, one show at a time. Thank you for listening.